Welcome to Art and Contrast. This is an art podcast where we talk about the integration, evolution, and history of art. I'm Kat, and this is Jerry. Welcome to the podcast. Today we are talking about where art is going to be in 100 years. So, Jerry, did you want to open
Okay.
up? We had some discussions about AI and digital art and where that's going to go. But then I know we did want to touch on the innovations that had led us up to this point as well.
hmm like I was saying before, like when you used to give comparisons, saying in a 100 years, where will we be with the car, or where will we be with, city planning and stuff like that? That's a good while. That's a good number to give, 100 years. But when we're talking about technology and computers and how fast it's advancing, I would say anywhere between 20 to 25 to even 50 years is going to be extremely impactful. So to even fathom what's going to be like in 100 years is going to be kind of heavy. I don't even know where we'll be, but
Um, Yeah, just speaking on like a technology standpoint, uh, just in my lifetime, because I am like an elder millennial, so I was there when AOL was dialing up to where we finally started taking typing classes in school on computers, and now this is where we're at. Where like we can contact pretty much anybody, anywhere in the world at any time,
hmm
do these streams. So it's been interesting just to see how much the artist community hated digital art when it first started coming out and its
hmm
usage in cartoons and things like Pixar and things like that. And now it has just completely integrated itself. People are like, "Oh, are you a digital or are you a traditional artist?"
hmm
Where there's still some sticklers that I'm semi one of them that I tend to like traditional art more. I think it takes a lot of talent, and it's a different type of talent for digital artists. But like, you don't get the same brushstrokes, even though it emulates brushstrokes that you do in paintings and
yeah.
things like that. So, it's I think of it as like two separate sections of of the same broad spectrum, but it
hmm
is two separate things completely. And then now we have people that call themselves AI artists. I have a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, feel free to elaborate. We'll all reach a point.
I always so I think with AI artists, I really think that it's more their commissioners. They give something an idea. This case, it's AI, whereas before it would have been an artist. They give the idea, they can refine it, but they're giving the idea to something else, and that something else happens to have like a lot of stolen content within it.
Yeah.
With all of the cases coming up now that social media has just been absolutely using us to scan and train AI. So it's like you give your idea to that, it creates the art, and then there's people coming back and saying, "Well, I'm an AI artist. I made this." And like, bro, you didn't make it. You gave it to somebody else. You gave it to
hmm
somebody else or something else, and told it what to create, and then it took its knowledge and made it. Um, that's like having a project manager
hmm
say that he laid the network in a building. You did not. Like you made the
Yeah,
the plan
you
to lay the
oversaw
network,
it.
but you yourself did not lay it. Yeah, you oversaw it.
Yeah. Um, I have yet to 100% fully understand how AI works within producing artwork and stuff, but what I am seeing is not, I don't feel like it's really conducive to being creative. Maybe like at the minimal, like just an idea that you're letting something else explode upon and develop for you. Um, there's always going to be that need for traditional art. Like we had mentioned on it before, like you can give us all the beautiful AI art you want or whatever. It's going to look amazing. There's no doubt about that. but real art tells real stories from real people. You know, you're not gonna, what's your story gonna be with the AI art? Like, I made a prompt or something. I could be
Hmm.
overgeneralizing that with that statement, but I feel like it's not really conducive to being as creative as traditional mediums. Again, that's
Right.
a very, very solid formed opinion, not a fact.
Well, I know one thing that's circulating the internet is there's a couple people that are like, oh, well, it's, for people without talent, or it's people without, um, like they have disabilities. That's the only way they can do it. And I saw a post that it said that guy saying that. And then there was like hundred of disabled people that were painting with their toes and their hand, like, they're like not hands, but like the robot hand.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, painting with that or painting with their mouths, creating art in different ways to like still, because I think no matter where it goes with AI, that need to be creative is still going to
hmm,
be there, and it always hurts my soul when people are like, "Oh, well, I have no talent. I can't draw a straight line." Okay, well, one, I don't draw straight lines. That
yep,
you'll never see any straight lines in anything that I
yep,
do. But it's, as artists, we know that it takes practice. Like, I'm not good at figure drawing. It takes me forever to do figure drawing. The figure drawings that I did when I first started out were not great. The ones I do now are good at times,
hmm,
but they are like weird looking, and so it's just like, okay, so I'm not great at portraiture. If I want to get good at portraiture, I'm going to have to train. Like, I have to practice. I have to do it in different mediums, see what works for me. And I just think it's a cop out when people say that. They're like, well, I have no talent. You know, I'm not artistic. And I'm like, well, I think personally that's not true, because I think everybody's an artist in some way or another,
oh yeah,
whether that's like
definitely.
cake baking or painting or, whatever. Um, I really think it is a cop out for somebody that just doesn't want to put in the work that artists actually put in. We stay home and draw and paint and work on something instead of going out. We found social medias where we can just sit in a room with other artists and draw, because we want
Yeah,
somebody near us, but we don't want to actually have anybody in the room with us. Like, I don't need you to bother me. You can do your art and I'll do my art. And then we're doing things separately but next to each other.
yeah.
you
See,
know?
and then when it comes to artists, I find that a lot of artists are reactive to each other. Sometimes some people are like, I'm in a block. I don't know what to do. I feel like I've lost it. But once they're around other artists, like they slowly reignite their passion again. And that's what I really love about some social media platforms because it really brings people together. Like it really, really does.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And um, I saw that a lot in the one we used to do together. And
Hmm.
it was, people would say in the chat that they're like, oh, I haven't drawn in forever. I haven't done this. I have an art block. I don't know what to draw. And then there's a collective of like, you know, up to 8 people sitting in there all drawing, and then you get inspired
Yep.
and somebody wants to draw, wants to create, or wants to go work on that wood thing. And so I don't think the drive for that is ever going to leave humanity. I think that is part of what makes us human. Going out into
Absolutely.
cutting down a tree and being like, you know what? I think I want an eagle in my yard with a chainsaw. And that want is still going to always be there,
Yeah.
and I don't think technology can really actually take that out of us, because I really think it is just like an integrated part of like us being human.
That
So
that
unless we
human
are
element
completely
is what
replaced by
makes it
robots.
so worth it because it started off just as a running joke. Like I would like joining other people's live feeds and stuff and be like, I see their amazing work, and it's something that I noticed I do to kind of like project a little bit, but if they're way better than me, I always like to throw in the joke, gee, I wish I could draw, like in the comments. Every artist's response is almost the same. And it goes with if you believe in yourself and your ideas, you can create. Anybody can create. That's the bottom line that I've heard. Hundreds of artists have made that joke to say anybody can create. And I was like, yeah, with your bare two hands, of course, anyone can create.
And speaking to that point, I am going to put some links down in the
Hmm.
doobly doos down below, um, of some artists that create with trash,
Oh,
with
yes.
litter that they find.
Hmm.
So, that's what I'm saying. I don't think that that's ever going to go away from us. We're going to put a links down in the doobly doo of a few artists that we gathered that do exactly that, where they're creating trash, where they're going out and cleaning up the earth, or doing performative art with trash. One of them that I would love to highlight is
El Anasui.
a Ghana born Nigerian based artist that creates metallic fabrics from stitching together flattened cans and caps with copper wire. I have personally seen one of these hanging at the Museum of Natural Art in Pittsburgh, and they're huge. For one, they're absolutely gigantic, and they cover a wall.
Hmm.
But because they're metal and wire, like he's able to move it so that it looks like fabric moving, like fabric waving there on the wall,
Yeah.
and it's gorgeous. Like the patterns that are in it and the colors that come through using all of the bottle caps and things. Um, I will put a little box up here that has
Yeah.
a picture of one of his pieces.
And
Um,
I love the type of drive that inspires. Like one day he just decided to like A, clean up, and then B, make something with it. So he's there are several levels to this.
yeah, and since they're so big, they take a lot of material. So they he has a whole team of people that go out and scour areas to clean up the trash and take out the bottle caps and things that are needed. So it's a massive cleanup project, but it's also a way of highlighting that that's an issue. Like we should all know that litter is an issue. We shouldn't litter, but we have like huge trash barges in the middle of the ocean. That side note, sidebar on that. Did you know that some fish have started to use it as a floating coral reef?
Use what?
The floating trash barges in the ocean.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yeah,
That
and
is
then some of
crazy.
the plastic eating bacterium that has become a thing. Now they don't. It's not a. They don't process it very quickly, but that might be something in the future that we can utilize to try to get rid of some of the microplastics.
Yeah,
But they've started in on that as well. So
that's
yeah, it's
fascinating. I
a
didn't know that.
yeah, it's a still not good that it's a thing that's happening, but at least nature has a way of prevailing.
I want to
um,
research the largest one that there is right now. The
there
largest like
is
trash
it's
island or
big.
whatever.
Yeah, I th- I don't know. I don't remember how because I saw something. I was watching something about the trash barges specifically that I saw that on, and I can't remember. They did mention it, but it's really big. It's a lot bigger than you think it is. But yeah, so there's going to be a few other artists down in the bottom, and then there's YouTubers like Bill making stuff and Stutson Studios that do trash builds. They'll
Hmm.
save up their plastic materials, and Stutson Studios made Howl's Moving Castle in all of its forms,
Oh my God.
very detailed. The body of the castle in the first form was a big kimchi jar,
Hmm.
big plastic kimchi jar. And he had like mayonnaise jars and little apple things, and it's you just realize how much plastic we are actually just like pitching all the time. But that's definitely um, they're taking they're having making it a way to making it into art. So like I don't think AI is ever going to replace us. I do think it's probably going to be utilized a lot more in other art forms as well as like making movies. Um, but you're always going to have things like the ballet, the orchestra, um, theater itself, going to Broadway and other theater productions have been a tradition for always. Like anytime, there's always been performers notated through history. So like I don't think that that's going to be something that it can fully replace. Though people have been saying that Oracle, since Oracle owns so many um, social medias and
Hmm.
broadcasting systems and things, and they have AI trained software, that their plan is going to be to start making movies and things and replacing actual actors with AI content.
Yeah, I had heard about that. The only thing that can bring that down is all of the actors not allowing their rights or whatever for to appear on camera and stuff. So if they do that,
Right.
they won't win, hopefully.
Hopefully, but I have a feeling that they would just create lovable characters and use them over and over again. Something similar like Kung Fu Panda. You know, we've watched, I don't know, there's two or three of those, right?
Mm,
Everybody knows Kung Fu Panda. So if you make a human in the same thing, make somebody that's similar to Brad Pitt, but not quite, somebody
yeah,
that's similar to, you know, um, Zendaya, and like like anybody, honestly, can get replicated and
yeah,
be far enough away that they're not stealing it, but it's the same personality types. So
yeah. I
I
guess
think right now it could.
I hadn't thought about it like that. AI could actually use its algorithms and stuff to gather familiar, popular faces and mold them into just one face for people to recognize. And be like, why do I
Hmm.
like that guy? Like, oh, because he's a mixture of Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt and et cetera, you know.
Right.
What's his face?
Yeah.
Legolas.
Legolas. Orlando Bloom.
There we go.
There we go. The other day I was trying to remember his name. I'm like the guy that was in Pirates of the Caribbean. I don't know. It's something in Florida. Um,
Yeah, and
could
then
not could not for the life of me remember it.
such a unique name, and I can never remember it. Orlando Bloom.
I can't remember their names anyways. I'm so bad at names.
But yeah, I've heard all those. I've heard from like graphic designers, computer engineers, everybody, like where their personal opinions and the direction AI is going.
Hmm.
And some of them are like, yeah, I'm glad to hear that there are people that think that this is going to fail eventually. And then there are a lot of people who think it's going to be successful, but like in a good way, not, shutting down artists, making people lose their jobs, ruining movies.
Hmm.
And then there are some people who see the darker side and are like, well, it's just like any tool in the right hands, it's the right tool. In the wrong hands, it's a weapon.
Right. A telescope becomes a rifle.
Mm,
Snipe. Snipe. No.
sniper rifle.
A sniper rifle. Yeah.
Um, but
Or my
yeah,
brain.
because I've already seen some videos. I'm not going to get topical on anything, but where recently bombs have fallen, they were
Hmm.
AI generating extra explosions and extra things that were flying around. And I was like, that is terrible. This is the worst use of AI.
Yeah. Yeah. Like it should be doing my taxes.
Exactly.
I'm just saying.
It should
It should
be,
be doing my taxes. It should be making my life easier, but not taking away my critical thinking. You know, um, it like like yeah, it would be good for if you have for it to like automatically put things in an appointment or
Mhm.
whatever, but I don't think it needs to take away like people writing emails and learning how to write more empathetically or more professionally, or um, should it maybe polish it? Yeah, but like then maybe like, or learn how to write. Like if you're going to be in
There's
a
that.
business position,
Yep.
yeah, if you're going to be in a business position, know how to write an email and not sound like a complete D bag, like have people skills.
Yeah.
Because
And
it'll, like, I think a lot of that critical thinking will take away some people skills. Um, I honestly think we've seen a bit of that anyways with
mhm.
just, and this has been talked about 1,000 times about how social media, brings us together, but it also gives that anonymity where you're hiding behind that screen and you can then outwardly
Exactly.
trash talk somebody and be like, oh, well, no one's going to come after me. Well, there's a lot of leaps and bounds and things, and
Mhm.
IPs aren't hard to backtrack.
On
So,
a more real level, the way how we've adapted with technology and stuff is like nobody anticipates the doorbell anymore or a knock at the door unsolicited. It's always a text
yeah.
message. I'm outside. I'm here. You know,
Yes.
somebody knocks on the door and you're like, fuck is that? Or who the F is that?
I know. And then you're going from behind the door. Who is it? If you don't got a camera out there, you're like, who's there? Like it's the postman? You sure?
Right?
Why are you at my door?
The only
Yeah.
times I'm okay with a knock at the door is if a call had been made to Pizza Hut like 30 minutes ago.
And
But
even then, I'm watching them on the app, seeing if they're close to the house because it tracks them.
I'm terrible. I'm terrible with packages and mail. I'm there looking at the app every 30 minutes. Where is it now? Oh, it's still in the same facility.
Well, I've lived in some places where things have gotten taken off of my porch, and it was like,
Oh,
yeah. So I'm always on top of that. They're like, your package is getting delivered soon. And I'm like looking out the window every 5 minutes, listening for the delivery truck. Like
that'd
it's
be crazy if like your package has arrived. Your package is being moved again. Like, what?
like, what? Where is the package going? Trackers on the packages.
But before I forget, I was because we were on the topic, right, of AI and stuff.
Hmm.
So AI has it's proving to be something that can be very powerful as a tool. What I want to know is why we're not investing millions and billions for AI to become like it is a little dangerous and risky, but it would just be a tool to like let's say, you know, you task it with its strongest uh thinking capabilities. How would you handle trying to remedy an illness like cancer or something, or something more practical of other than human life, like sustaining ourselves? Like, okay, AI, like if you were talking to it as a person, focus on renewable energy, like do something like that, and have it just thinking and thinking and processing every day, gathering all the information it can and see
Um,
what that'll turn out.
so in some countries, they have started to do that,
Hmm.
implementing it to. There's been in just in the end of 2025 and beginning of the 2026, there have been four separate instances for four different types of cancers that they think that they have found cures for, where they worked with AI to be like, okay, what are we missing?
Hmm.
What this is what's going on, and whatever. Um, and then the the doctors are taking it and reviewing it and trying out different things and then inputting information. So I know that's a thing, and I know, mm, I want to say Denmark, maybe the Netherlands. There's one that has been working with AI and the AI program to try to get their emissions down that I
Hmm.
was reading about as well. I will have to when I find I'll have to find that article and link that down in the description as well.
Absolutely.
Um, but here in the United States, capitalism rules, and we have been using it more for war tactics.
Hmm.
There have been some private investor movements with AI to try to solve a lot of like our issues. But then, the big corporations kind of step in the way and try to like, oh well, it's gonna take away this much profit from us, and and that's not being political. That's just that is what is going on. And then there's court cases and things where they're trying to get the legislation pushed through, and then there's pushback from the lobbyists, and
Hmm.
it's a big hot mess. But it is, you're right, it is what we should be using it for. It
Yeah.
should be like implemented for these great things, and it's right now majoritarily because of the conflicts that are currently going on. It is being more war implemented,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where it's always been predicted to go, isn't it? Like from movies and comic books and everything, that the evil villain was going to get a hold of it and turn robots against us and turn it into AI war machines. And um, it's just sad that that's how it's actually playing out, and
Hmm.
that there weren't legislations put in place previous to stop sort of things. But I don't know why they didn't. We all knew this was the direction technology was going.
Yeah.
So it's
But when you
just
when you think
very,
about it,
very silly.
it came so rapidly too, because 20 years ago, none of this was being spoken about. Nothing. This wasn't a thing 20 years ago. It was just
Right.
a dumb video of Will Smith eating noodles or something. That first AI video, one of the first ones that came out, it's an AI video of Will Smith just gorging on noodles. That's it. Yeah, but like they
Uh,
did a 20-year comparison of that to a one that was did like done like yesterday. It's insane. It looks like Will Smith is eating just nonstop
is
noodles.
eating noodles, just nonstop, just a whole big mukbang of noodles.
Yeah, but like he gets the whole thing and like dumps it on himself and he's eating it and
Okay, I'm gonna. I'll have to find that.
I'll link it to you definitely. But so
Yeah.
how we were saying like okay, we don't want AI to take over critical thinking and stuff like that for us, you know. But
Hmm.
if we did give it a task like come up with a renewable brand new source of energy and it comes up with some kind of like hyperfusion or something, right? Not only did it do the thinking for us, but at the same time, we should be able to construct AI and also tell it, like, okay, now that you've done what we've asked, teach us how you did that so that we know also for our own edification
Yeah.
to pass down, you know?
Yeah, and you can do that. Like, I knew somebody that when they were doing math problems and they didn't like they ran into one that they couldn't do,
Mm,
it would they'd plug it into ChatGPT and then be like, "How did you get to this? Please show
mm,
your work." And it would like break it down, and so that he was actually using it as a teaching tool. So like it really depends on the user. Like, yeah, I can just it's kind of like a calculator. I can plug it in and it'll tell me the answer, or I can have it show you the work and explain it, and with AI it's then able to explain it. However, I hear that the accuracy rate is only still at 80%.
mm-hmm.
um, Neil deGrasse Tyson came out speaking with somebody not too long ago that it was about 83 to 88%, I think is what he had said. He asked it questions for things that he knew, like he knew were true, and that was within his realm of knowledge,
Yeah.
and it got it right in the 80 percentile. So still risky business.
Yeah, I mean, it's not going to be
But
flawless.
it'll get better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why you also need humans in there, because like we have to do the testing and the building, and even if it's put out to robots, yeah, I can write the program, but there still needs to be that human element in there. I don't think AI is going to overtake everything everywhere. Somebody still has to run the machine.
It's still
If
going to have a basis of processing things, I feel like what we're capable of. It's not going to start processing like alien thoughts and, its own society beliefs, stuff like that. I feel like if AI ever
yeah,
does have its own opinions and stuff like that, emotions, a lot of it is going to be derivative of us because we made it. It's
yeah, well,
learning
that's what
through
they're
its
saying.
own
How right? Yeah, a lot of people are saying how uh, there's various. The one on Twitter or X is said to be very racist,
Yikes.
but that's a very polarized platform. There's a lot of extremists on there blurting out their nonsense, and so that's what it's getting trained on. So if that's what it's getting trained on, that's what it's going to spew back.
Mhm.
And so I think it is something that really has to be regulated and taught, that certain things aren't okay. That
Mhm.
you can't behave in this manner, but that also takes coding. That takes going on the back end and doing if this, then this, sort of coding. And I think they honestly need to take it down to that basic level
Yeah,
with that, is
for
where you
real.
like plug those in and be like, you know, if this list of words come out, you don't use them. Like that's pretty much it. I understand that the collective is saying this, but you don't say that.
Yeah, I know, but it's so hard to hear all these positive, wonderful things like we're discussing, but on the opposite end, there are some malicious people tempering and messing with things and how
Hmm.
we're like, yeah, you shouldn't use these words. Like, who are we to judge what is good and bad to teach an AI operating system when somebody else out there is teaching them what is their version of good and it could be horrific.
Right.
I don't know. It's a whole thing, but only time will tell where all this will go.
Well, I don't think it should use slurs.
For all I
If
know,
nothing else, just no slurs.
a giant
Yeah,
solar
giant
flare could
solar flare will take it all out, and
yeah,
we're
could
gonna
hit
go
the Earth
primitive again.
tomorrow and wipe
I'm
everything
ready. It's
clean.
fine. Yeah, I'll. My backup plan during the apocalypse was just to bunker. Um, Probably not bunker, but I can survive. I like my things, but I can also like grow garden can. I'm not a prepper, but kind of like all of my hobbies
Yeah,
are
all my art supplies would
prepper
be down
based.
there. All of
My
my
you
art
know my art
supplies.
supplies, but like I go rock hounding, so I know where to find minerals. I'll be able to make my own, like at least ochres. I'll get red and yellow ochre, no problem. I go rock hounding, I go foraging, I garden, I can, I know how to make sourdoughs and breads and all of that. And I don't have a standing mixer, so I'm whenever when I'm always like I make bread every Saturday. I'm making bread every Saturday. Like
Oh,
there with
wow.
my wooden spoon, making my back sore, because that is a
That's
whole like
cool.
upper body workout. Yeah.
You have like a
Um,
natural survivability. I have more of like a suburban mentality of how to survive. Like if you have a dull knife and there's no way to sharpen it, you break a toilet and you can sharpen it with the porcelain that the toilet is made of, and then it's like razor sharp again.
Yes, yeah. Um, I
But
have a whetstone
making
for that,
bread
but you could
is
also
far more
just use
important.
yeah, but you can always just use a whetstone too. Um,
Yeah.
like a just a wet stone from outside.
Hmm.
You know. Um, but yeah, so it's like but that's why you need community. Um, in those kind of times, not everybody's going to have every skill. So, and I think that's the same way in the art world. I don't think AI is going to replace the want to go to art shows and see art in person and see the
Hmm.
created things. I don't think it's going to take away collectors, um, because collectors usually collect because of the artist name a lot of the times, but also their techniques and how the painting looks and the ways they can stare at it to see like all the little nuances that are put in there. And I don't think that AI is going to be able to really replace that. Like, yeah, it can create. I don't know if you've seen the coffee one where it had like it went from a cup of coffee to like the coffee was like expanding in the universe, and then it said the perfect cup of coffee, and it just had a couple sitting there with a cup of coffee at a cafe. Um, there was a bunch of like little touches in there,
Hmm.
but some of them made more sense as filler than being meaningful. And with traditional artists and even digital artists, you get more little hints to like the people's personality and things that are important to them when you get background clutter or just subject matters. It's just there's that humanness about it that I don't think AI is going to be able to
No,
replace.
and essentially, like, again, I have to have a very deeper understanding on how AI functions, but I can understand how AI can create some artwork and like brush strokes and stuff like that. But what I want to know is how it's actively doing this. Is it just basically copying images it's seen and replicating it in small amounts, just enough to make the image its own? Because I know, like, when I see
Hmm.
a brush stroke on a painting, that brush stroke had purpose, you know? There was
Yes.
reasoning behind it. It wasn't just copy paste. It wasn't just what it's seen, the artist or whatever.
I'm gonna have to send you a picture of one of the blenders. I can't send it on here,
Hmm.
because there's too much booby going on. Um, I because I don't like AI art. I'm going to be very very adamant about that. But I was like, I want to see what the hype is. So I went on a couple different AI platforms, ones that you could do openly, and just plugged in one of my D&D characters descriptions. Oh boy, the one got me back with four boobies, five knees. There was like three hands. It was two and a half hands,
Wow.
but she was like crouched down and almost as if she was like maybe a spotter or a hunter,
Hmm.
in the woods, and she's like crouching down like as if she's listening for something. And her like wrist was like halfway through the knee, and the muscles were all weird, and the hands looked like feet on the hands. Honestly, and those are some long toenails. I was like, where did you even get the long toenail description
Long
from?
toenails.
Who, what pictures were you being fed about toenails that needed to be trimmed? It didn't look anything like my character. It was like nowhere close to it.
No.
So I think no matter what, you're still going to get that, maybe not to that degree all the time. but there's plenty of times where I'm watching something and I'm like, the voice sounds a bit off, or they try to do the face twitches that we have.
Yeah.
But like, there's a thing that happens with your eyebrows. Like, anytime you want to emphasize something, your
Hmm.
eyebrows will flick up involuntarily. If it's really emphasizing it, your eyebrows will stay up there for a while. I personally talk with my eyebrows. That's like where all of my creases are.
Hmm.
I barely have any crow feet. We only got a little bit of smile lines, and it's just like all eyebrow, right? Um, so it'll try to mimic that, but it does it incorrectly. And so I'll stare and I'll be like, something's off about this. And so I'll stare and watch for like the eye twitches and the muscle twitches. And I'm like, oh, no, this is an AI
Yeah,
generated commercial.
sometimes
We
you
got
can
that.
tell just by cues, visual or audible cues. Like one way I can tell sometimes is the audio doesn't match, like the voice. There's too much vocal articulation than there is actual physical articulation going on
Hmm.
with the muscles and everything. I'm like, that looks so weird.
Right.
It looks like they're talking with their
Yeah.
mouth closed and they're not even moving. I don't know. It's weird.
Right. Yeah. And coming at from somebody that doesn't have a lot of upper lip movement, I'm just like, yeah, y'all are doing that wrong.
You're saying eyebrows? I don't have eyebrows.
You don't have eyebrows.
No.
Did they just
I'm
not grow in?
heavily Mexican and Native American, so I have like no body hair.
Ah.
This
I
is
have
like,
very thick eyebrows, but I lack body hair, except on my face. I have enough facial hair to make a 12-year-old boy jealous. However, I don't have to shave my legs, like ever. So,
yeah.
when the gods made me, they were like, here, this is where all her hair from her body will be, was just on her face. We're going to make her pretty, but she is mustachioed.
Right. Okay. What I was saying was that um how when I surround myself with the artists, it's very inspiring. They are my muse. Uh, they're what ignites me to become better, especially if somebody's better than me. It pushes me even harder. So if something is going to attack so hard as AI against me, that's going to push me even stronger and harder to strive for my craft, like I'm hoping that does the same for other artists that they see how let's say quote unquote powerful AI is becoming. It pushes us to become even stronger as a community, as an artist, as people who perceive the world the way we do. So in a
I'm
very
hoping my art sabotages it.
in a very good way, I hope this is a good thing. Like it pushes us all to become even more powerful.
Yeah, I hope so too. And even in the like the age of Pixar, we still have like Ghibli studios that hand paint everything.
Hmm.
They have started wanting to do more digital stuff, and the lead cartoonist, who I know his name but cannot think of his name, I'll put that down there. Um, and that makes me mad that I can't think of his name. He's very upset about it because it's always been a traditional art style. But um, I have been. I'm hoping that my art sabotages AI, because I have always too many eyes and too many fingers, and my all-seeing hyena doesn't have any eyes, but its spots are completely eyes. All of its hyena spots are eyes.
That is
So I'm hoping that I sabotage it, and it will continuously give too many of things. And I think other people should do so as well.
that's an awesome way to
Like
think
every
about it because
third or fourth post.
that is all my artwork.
Yeah.
It's surreal.
Yeah. We are both, surrealist artists, in different ways. but we're both
Hmm.
surrealist artists where we really push those boundaries of what's kind of like uncanny and what's gone completely into the other side of surrealism. It's
Hmm. Yeah, I
you
like
know, I love
surrealism.
surrealism and abstract.
I
I
have.
don't. I also don't think it can really truly mimic the depth and things that you get with abstracts. Like, yeah, it does abstracts like our background here. It's just like a generated one from the software, but uh, you can't get the depth that you do with paintings because all of my abstracts are very textural.
Mm,
Like well, that one's a surreal piece, but that's 3D. These ones down here have intentional cracks and fissures that happen with the weight of the paint as it
mm,
sinks, so
yeah.
that you get a lot of textures, and a lot of times you do heavier brush strokes. Oop, little girl, sorry, I have to help my dog. If you do the heavier brush strokes, then you get like those deep ridges from the brushes themselves, and I don't think it has a grasp on how to really mimic that,
Mm,
and how to bring that creation around. So I don't know. I think it'll have a place, but it's not going to completely replace us. But there are
yeah.
going to be less jobs because of it.
If anything, I see it more practical for like engineers and stuff. Like if you've already have your blueprint and you want to see what it would look like realistically rendered, then by all means
Hmm.
use AI, Don't
Right.
don't go overboard and wear yourself thin, but at the same time if an artist wants to do it, I would say let the artist do it. But
Right.
if you just need a
Yeah.
quick realistic rendition of something, then yeah, like I feel that that is acceptable to a degree.
I went on a date one time with this guy. The date was horrible. It was a bad date all around. But we were sitting at dinner, and he's like, "So you're an artist?" Like I looked through your Instagram, and I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "You make some really cool stuff." He's like, "I'm an artist too. I make AI abstracts." And I was like, "Oh."
Oh, wow.
Oh, and he's like, maybe we could collaborate. He's like, I've done that before, where I gave like my background and somebody painted on top of it, and I was just like, mm. I feel like this is almost like I morally can't.
Yeah.
Um, you know, it that date was so bad, and I'll tell you about that offline because that's a whole story. Maybe we can leave that story for the
I don't know how I would
Patreons because
handle that because that's an immediate like deal breaker right there.
it
I
is,
don't know.
and it was. And I didn't, that was the first time I came across somebody saying they were an AI artist in the wilds, minus my narcissistic ex who wrote a couple children's stories. Did not say that it was AI written, said that he wrote it.
Oh
And
my goodness.
yeah, and I was like, you can't do that. Like, you have to, and that was a whole thing. But that's the type of person he was. So this was like the first experience with like somebody brand new saying, "Oh yeah, I'm an AI artist," and like confidently. And I was just like,
The
"Wouldn't it be
confidence.
better if you were a digital artist? At least you were doing the brushstrokes. Like,
Hmm.
you're picking the brushes and the tones and doing the brushstrokes on a digital screen, but like." There's still like the pressure aspect, and if you're using the side of your pen and to the point or whatever, there's still the technique of making the art rather than that. And he fully said that like he doesn't do anything to it except for plug in what he wants. And I was just like,
Yikes. I don't know how I feel about that.
yeah,
I really don't know what I would tell somebody if I was in your situation.
yeah.
I
And Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I fumble over my own words. So if I'm put in a predicament like that, I'm gonna be like, well, because art, it's up to your own interpretation, and I'm just going to sound so dumb.
I went, oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know if I want to do that collaboration, but like my face is so telling.
Yeah.
So it's just like I was just like, oh, is that what you do? Oh, yeah, okay. I need my check.
Right.
No, no, I'll pay for mine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Um, there's I have friends that I play D&D with. None of them are artists per se. They usually get their stuff commissioned and or uh, take an image from like Pinterest and then take it into Paint and modify it. Um, the the dungeon master, we had a whole thing. He goes, okay, so listen, I he's like really against using AI art to generate, and all we have is like little tokens, or just be like, this is what she's going to look like in a different outfit, or whatever. I draw a lot of my stuff. I think there's been two that I just like randomly snagged something off of the internet. I was like, we're just going to use this for the time being until I
Hmm.
can draw something, because humanoids, figure drawing is not my strong suit. But he like didn't, he's adamant that we don't use AI generated art for our D&D games. And he was so beside himself. He's like, okay, what if I changed so much on it that it's no longer anything but a figure? And I was like, well, I mean, at that point, it is just you were using the body figure and then working on top of that, because he like changed the hand, he changed the clothes, he did like a different stocking situation, he added tattoos, and like there was a great deal of editing that he ended up doing. He's like, I just can't draw figures. And I was like, yeah, fair, because I mean there's plenty of software out there that you can maneuver it to look in whatever figure you
Yeah.
want to use as a reference, or to use as a traceable reference for digital art. So I was just like, I think that's a pass, because he then took it and really changed a whole lot. He showed me the beginning picture and the end, and I was like, oh, it's like barely even the same thing. It's just
Yeah.
literally the body pose,
That
yeah, and
and
the
that
face.
is still levels above AI generated art, I believe.
Yeah. Um, you know, and so that um, I think we could actually kind of tie that into the camera obscura conversation that I wanted to have,
Sure.
with utilizing different techniques throughout the ages, and like what got us here to AI in the first place,
Mm.
and how other things through history definitely were looked upon as what was going to replace digital art or traditional art. Um, so just to do like a quick run through of the process, and then we can always touch more onto them. Back in Da Vinci's day, they had, and even before, Da Vinci ended up taking it and using it for art, him and a few other artists. But before this, it was a lot of mathematicians and scientists would make the camera obscura, which is a box with a pinhole in it, and you can put an observation window, but the object on the outside of the box will come in and be projected upside down. So there was a gentleman that I will put his name across the screen because I do not want to botch that up. My dyslexic ass is really good at botching up names. But he was a scientist during the Islamic Golden Age, where in the area that's present day Iraq. Um, he made leaps and bounds on experimenting with it and how the light hits the object outside, because you have to have the light shining this way for then the projected light to go into the hole.
Mm,
Um, that was utilized later on, like I said, by Leonardo da Vinci and a few other famous artists for doing murals, using it as a projector and doing some of their figure paintings, being able to trace. It does get fuzzy at the edges, and sometimes it's a little obscured, like especially around the ears or things. But it would be able to get them a solid start,
hmm.
so that they didn't have to. Also, people were physically sitting for you at that time, so somebody would have to sit in that same position for 8 hours. This was an easy cheat for them. But that led into uh, the camera Lucinda, and then the camera itself. So that kind of split. The camera Lucinda was then the predecessor of today's modern projector, but you could look at a figure in front of you, and then the mirrors would cast that image down in like a ghost image on your canvas or paper, to which point you could trace.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, so it's and then like I said, the other branch of that was towards the camera, which when the camera came out and was invented, there was a lot of people that were like, oh, well, there's going to be no need for landscape artists anymore or portraiture artists. Like, it's just going to completely replace them. And it's run alongside of it. Yeah, yeah, not everybody's buying portraitures painted before, but that was more of an elite luxury, anyways, to get a
Yeah.
portraiture painted. And it did like then allow people to just take pictures of their family and me 1,001 mushrooms in my phone and lots of pet pics and selfies. You know what I mean? So and now we have those little tiny cameras in our phone. So it's been like this huge progression. And even during the camera obscura days, there were haters on that. That it was cheating. That you should just make somebody sit there for the 8 plus 3 days. It was just so there's always been people that I think it's going to ruin things, but in the past, I think that has always shown to not be a true narrative. And even though I think AI will be implemented into some forms, you can see my little dog running around, some forms of art, I do think it's just going to have its separate place in the art world. I don't think it's going to overtake us because, as we mentioned earlier, there's a need to make things. Like people like to make things for themselves to be like, oh, cool. Where did you get that? I made it. Where'd you get that hat? I knitted it. Like
Yeah. You also have that sense of pride when someone's like, that thing you made is amazing. I'm like, thank you. It was hard work,
like
but
thank
thank
you,
you.
thank you. Yeah, like I've made. I at one point in time I did woodworking. I don't have all the tools or the place in this apartment to do woodworking anymore, so it's all sitting down. Same with glass, stained glass. All my supplies are in the basement waiting for me to be able to get a house or at least an apartment with a shed I can turn into a workshop. Um, but yeah, so like,
It was at this very moment that Kat's ADHD kicked in, and she lost her train of thought.
so in the past I've done woodworking, and people have come into the house and been like, "Oh, that's a really cool table. Like, how much did that cost you?" The materials. you
Hmm.
know, I've made like bottle cap tables for people, and I'm like, it was a lot of drinking. Luckily I actually saved my bottle caps from my 20s. I have 4 bags of them.
Wow.
Not every cap was saved. I have an abundance of Yingling. Um, so those I think I just started throwing away at some point. Now I no longer drink, but I've made like a small end table out of some of them, and I still have 4 bags left that I am going to, I think, make another table out of because that's fun.
Nice.
And there's a gentleman now that does portraiture with bottle caps. He'll have
Really?
people send in bottle caps, yeah, and he does great portraitures, mostly of famous people, but he's done some like memorabilia ones, and it's I think it's great because he'll like he tries to keep the label showing full and like bend it to how he wants, and then he just nail guns it like right onto
Yeah.
this plywood, and you step back and it's like a Monet, like it's something you have to view from further back, and then you're like, dang, and then you get closer and you're like, really dang, like that was just a smooch of uh blue paint on Monet's thing, and but like back from back, it looks like a water lily. It's the same way. You step a couple feet back, and it's somebody's portraiture, and then you get forward, and you're like, I can see every single one of the nail heads.
Yeah,
Yep.
that type of art is insane. Like when they do the nail in the wall and they're wrapping like a piece of yarn around it, and they'll put another nail and wrap it around there, and when they pull out, it's like Morgan Freeman or something. I'm like, what?
Yep. Something doesn't come out right, go surreal with it. If it's not what it's in your head, just run with it.
Yeah, I
I
know.
was like, did you ever see that the half and half where it was like Marilyn Monroe on one half and a skull on the other?
No.
It's a really pretty picture. The reason the artist did it is because he couldn't get the symmetry and kept
Uh-huh.
messing up the one side of her face, and then was like, "Fuck it, it's just going to be a skeleton." And it was like, so it was like this is all Marilyn, and then this is skull. So
That is still
yeah,
awesome though.
that's the importance of not being able to just let the art be what it's going to be. You know, his portrait of her would probably have came out amazing, but it's the the ability to go, oops, that's not working out, let's do this instead,
Yeah.
that sometimes becomes like the better known piece.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't think that we'll get that with AI in any shape or form. I mean, you get the funny blunders like the one I had with the many boobies and the many knees and all that, but it's not an artistic choice. It's just a software error, you
Hmm.
know. So yeah, and with I don't I don't think we'll get, because politics and art have always run hand in hand. Like artists, that's
Hmm.
why during the Nazi regime, he said you can only paint one type of art. Like he told artists that they weren't allowed to paint anything else, but I think it was like landscapes or him, I believe, were the two options. He himself was an artist who got rejected from art school, but he was an artist and he still painted later on. Um, but he said, like you can't, because he knew that artists would be painting what they saw, painting their feelings about the current government, and his propaganda machine was so strong that he's like, you can't even create. Did people do it and just hide it away in their attics? Yes. Um, but it's like art has always been at the forefront of politics, and uh, even just the comics. You have political comics. That's
Oh
another
yeah.
form of art form that goes
Hmm.
along with it. And I don't think you're gonna be able to get the feeling into them with using AI art that you will when somebody else does it. Because it's just, I don't know. Mm. There's that, like, at least when I read comics, I know it's somebody on the other side of that page, like, putting their personal views into the comic.
Hmm.
Um, and it's hilarious. There was one Pearls and Swine one when Google first became really popular,
Hmm.
and like when it first launched, and I had the comic strip for like years. I think it finally ripped one time during the move, but it was like, hey, they were doing a crossword puzzle, and they were like, what's the thing for this? And they were like, huh, I don't know. It might be, XYZ. And somebody's in the background. He goes, ask Google. And they do this 3 times. And he's like, Google doesn't know everything. And the one in the back is like, Google is God. And I was like, yeah, Google. I used to go around saying that a lot, being funny, but like it is almost reached to that point where we will ask Google absolutely everything before thinking about it ourselves or trying to maybe find some context on it and just use whatever Google summary.
Yeah, I agree with that there, but I find a lot of the time when I say, because everybody says the phrase Google it. Whenever I say Google it, it's because we're trying to remember something we already know, a fact that we're trying to recall. The only
Yeah,
time I've ever
a lot
used
of times.
uh anything from the internet to help me solve a real world problem was something cooking related, or when I didn't know how to change my first brake pads in my vehicle. So it helped.
YouTube is great for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
But yeah, most
I
of the
watch a
time
lot of YouTube videos.
it's not to teach me things, it's more to help me remember things like what was the name of the biggest star closest to us other than our sun, and it'll tell you like, oh, Betelgeuse, because blah blah blah. Like, I mean, that's an actual star. That's a fact I actually had to Google because I forgot the name of the star, and I was like, Betelgeuse.
Beetlejuice. I always thought it was named after the movie, but apparently it had that name long before
No,
then.
I think it's been around for quite a while.
Yeah, from like before Aristotle days.
Yeah, I'm like, it's
but
they're not Michael
but
Keaton
20-year-old me was like, oh, did they really name, because nerds do name things after things. SpongeBob
Yeah.
has a not a sponge, but I think a sea slug named after it. Um, Beyonce has several ants with big booties named after it, after
Wow.
her. There's Neil deGrasse Tyson has an insect named after him. So it's just like there's a lot of very silly um, media based names in the scientific world. So that's what my 20-year old brain was like. Oh, they named it after the movie.
Yeah,
And then I learned later that that wasn't true later in my 20s, not long after.
people are doing that with children. I know I have an associate that I'm not gonna say her real name, but when I first met her, she's like, I bet you can't guess how I got my name. And I guessed it immediately. I was like, your parents are fans of the movie, so they chose to name you as a character from the movie? And she's like, oh my God, how did you guess that? I'm like, because you have a pretty unique name that I've never heard outside of this movie.
Yeah. I have a friend that's I know a few people that have named their kids after video game characters out of like Final Fantasy or
Oh my God.
um, Kingdom Hearts.
Nice.
Kyrie,
Yeah.
uh, yeah,
That's kind of cool.
Kyrie, and then the one kid was named Tifa
Tifa.
from Final
Tifa is
Fantasy.
an acceptable name.
Yeah, I mean my dog's named Yuffie,
Oh, really?
so yep, yeah, from Final Fantasy because she acted like her so bad when she would like run around all crazy.
Yeah.
In some of the boss fights, if you run around and collect all the materia, and then at some point would get knocked out in the game and sit there and like have stars around her head until you could get her up and going. But like she always got knocked out. And my dog was so hyperactive and had the zoomies nonstop that she would run into the wall, to you, the
Oh my
couch,
God.
her cage. I got her a dog cage. She was 2.2 pounds when I got her. She, at her peak, was 15 pounds. So she's a small dog. But I got her a mastiff size crate. So because she was so bad when we were first house training, that I had to like crate her, but I wanted her to have like a play area. So she had this like huge crate, and she would, oh my god, sometimes I would come home and like the crate was tipped, and I was like, what were you even doing in there? But like Yeah, she would run into the couch and then like sit there for a second and be like, "Ooh, okay," and then take off again. And I was playing Kingdom Hearts 1 at the time, and I was like, and I was a Final Fantasy fan before that, and I was like, okay,
That's
I'm
cool.
gonna name you Yuffie.
Hey, Yuffie.
I was like, you're definitely a Yuffie. Something I did want to touch on is pigments and paints because that's come a long way with. We still use some natural pigments, but like things like lapis lazuli for blues or cadmium with using the insects for red,
Mhm.
um, have started to go be replaced by synthetic pigments. Um, Something that I do want us to touch base on later and actually do a bigger deep dive into this is about pigments and about the mummies that were used to make mummy brown during the Victorian era. And I think that's a very interesting and kind of macabre subject, but I do think we need to speak on that later on.
Oh yeah.
Um, but I wonder how they're going to produce things in the future, especially if the way things are going, where there's starting to be scarcity of natural resources to make some of the pigment colors. How they're going to be replacing them, if we're going to end up losing some colors altogether, or if they're just going to be able to like synthetically make all of them. Because I know for the most part, they can get pretty close to the true colors.
Hmm.
But there was a color that Bob Ross used all the time that was like it ran out between when he was painting and now, and so it is
Really?
synthetic. And people that have used the original were like, it's just not quite like there's just something that's not quite right about this. And it's one of the I'll fill in which color it is here. I'll look it up. But
Yeah.
it's one of the ones that he always used, and he was always using like those like four or five colors, and kind of introduced some other ones. But it was like one of the ones because I was looking for it, and I was like, why can't I find this? And then I looked it up, and I was like, oh, it's not made anymore. Like,
Mhm.
oh well, damn.
Dang, I
Okay.
didn't know that.
Um. Hmm.
With things like scarcity, the paints that are becoming even more expensive are the ones that are because, you know, they're running out. Like the materials are becoming thin. To me, I've always wondered like cobalt blue, the paint.
Hmm.
Um, why it's such a brilliant color. It's really nice color. The actual cobalt itself, though, is to some degree like bad for you or toxic or something like.
Yes, a lot of paint pigments are actually toxic, um, especially with the oil paints because they tend to use more true pigments instead of synthetics.
Hmm.
Um, and I mean, and also the turpentines and things that are used with that, but that's separate. Yeah, that's why like a lot of people will paint with gloves on when they're doing oil paintings. Um, at least like the artists that I've talked to that are primarily oil painters, they make sure that they have gloves on to try to avoid the carcinogens that are in the paint.
I
And
should really tell another associate of mine because she paints in acrylic and oil, but she has this habit of using this part of her hand as a mini like, do I like this skin tone? No, like, and she'll be using it as a
mhm.
palette like all throughout her arm. And I've seen her do it with oil and acrylic.
Yeah, I acrylic I will sometimes if I'm doing like small little details, I'll mix a pool on my finger
Hmm.
and do that. Um, I mean that's probably putting a ton of microplastics because acrylic is uh,
Yeah.
a plastic paint, you know, and it's probably putting way more microplastics into me than I'm already ingesting in our day to days. Um, which is at ridiculous levels. I saw the reports the other day, and I was like, ah, that's not that's not great. Like
Yeah.
we need to fix that. Yeah, I don't know how to fix that, but I think somebody can fix that.
Everything needs
But yeah,
fixing.
yeah, I'm gonna be interested to see even in the next like 20 years what's gonna happen with various color pigments and if some are gonna be replaced by other things or some are just gonna completely go to the wayside where we're not gonna be able to recreate it enough that the artists are going to like it, or if they'll just continue to make it and eventually the artists that use the originals will die off and then you're left with a fresh batch of artists that didn't even know that a pigment existed. So because like you won't go out. I think there's I take that back. I think there's one company recently that has started to replicate mummy brown, and call it mummy brown. um, but from the Victorian times, once that their supply of mummies have ran out to the point where they no longer, and then there was ethical reasons of not using ground up mummies and things. Um, when that ran out, they just had stopped making it and just made other brown colors. Uh, but arsenic green and mummy brown, I think, are possibly made by the same company. Because arsenic green, the green that you get from like the poison arsenic,
Hmm.
is this amazing green, but it would leach. People dyed their clothes, their wallpaper, all of that, but it would leach into you.
My
There was
God.
cases of women dying after balls because they would like go into a dance ball, that so much would leach into their skin from dancing and sweating that it would like end up poisoning them. Um, so they just stopped making that color and stopped, and it was just like this vibrant acid green. Like you got to look it up. It's a really good green,
Yeah.
and it's one that I think should be in our color palette. Not using that pigment, but it's it's still like I saw a comparison of the two, of like the original one and then the reproduction. And even though the reproduction is very, very, very close, there's subtle differences. But I think it might go to that sort of thing where we're just always trying to replicate what was before. But I think that will end up just making art look a little different from now to then. But that's the same with going back to Da Vinci or Michelangelo or whatever. They used different pigments. Of course, they had the pigments, and their stuff wasn't as color fast
Mm.
as it is today. Even our material that we're like, oh, it's not very color fast. It's a lot more color fast than those. You see any art that was like exposed to the elements, that art like is completely washed out. Some
Yeah.
things are completely different colors. You can't tell that that was ever a red, you know. Um, but
I heard of a
that,
piece that
that's
they
that was
found in
cool.
London. Like, this was recent, but recent being like 70 years ago. An old painting parchment. It was painted on parchment paper that was rolled up, but it was left out in the elements in a jar that was just full of sand. And so when they pulled it out, people were taking photographs because what they were worried was going to happen happened. So as they were unfolding it and unrolling it very professionally, very delicately, the thing basically disintegrated, fell apart, and turned into dust. There's only
Oh my
like
gosh.
12 really good pictures of what they saw before it disappeared. I was like, oh, that's terrible.
Oh, that's crazy.
So I wrote that down because I
That's
wanna I wanna research what that was. And also I was thinking of a paint that we don't use anymore, and I forgot what it is or what it was, but it was used a lot during the 40s and 50s. And it was used to, for the most part, to paint jewelry and the inside of like fancy watches.
watches.
Yeah. Um,
The uranium based.
yes. What was that? Do you remember what it was called?
I think it was like your. A lot of times it was called like uranium glow. They used it
Something.
in cosmetics and toothpaste
Hmm.
and hair stuff, and it would give you like a radiant glow to your skin.
Yeah,
Um,
the one that they were using for paint though was causing the most problems because they were basically hiring just women, anybody who
oh,
needed work, and they were like, all you have to do is all day paint these watches and whatever, and then they were giving them the most ridiculous painting techniques and tips to get precision. The paint was, or the substance was a little too like gloppy, so they would say get the brush and put it in your mouth to pull it to a fine point, then dip it, paint, and repeat. And so they're putting
hmm.
this all, and what would happen over the course of like 10, 15 years, everything like decayed off from where they were like touching it. Their
Hmm.
fingertips were decaying off, their mouths came off completely. I'm like, oh my
Their
goodness.
yeah, their jaws and
Mm,
um, I saw a documentary about that and saw the photographs and stuff.
yeah, I just
It
can't
took
think of.
so long for those women to get compensation for that because the company had pushed back so hard, saying that it wasn't their fault that they were doing that technique, that they never told them to do that technique, and
Yeah, that was a lie.
it was just yeah, that was a lie. Yeah, of course that was a lie. Yeah, it was that was an ugly, ugly time. But that is one of those things where like we've replaced it with other glow in the dark, paints. They don't work as well
Hmm.
as that uranium did because the uranium just always glowed. It just always had that nice toxic glow to it.
Yeah,
Where color or sorry, glow in the dark things, you have to really charge in the sun. So it's yeah, it goes back to that. I'm like, what we're gonna find that we're using now that's so toxic, and like what has been like we've been using without a care in the world, similar to putting lead in everything. Lead based white paint
oh my God.
is still available for purchase, even though we know that it causes deformations and can cause death in children and in pets that ingest the paint chips.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
um, but it's still something that you can buy because lead makes an amazing white. So it's just like,
Just, I mean, it's be careful with it. I guess you would take every precautionary measure.
yeah, but you're never gonna be able to. What you do is still going to be there when you're gone. You know what I mean? So it's like you can take every precautionary measure and paint it on areas that children aren't going to get to and make sure that you touch it up all the time and reseal it and everything. But that doesn't mean that your children or whoever gets the house next is going to even think that that would
Yeah.
be lead paint.
So I've heard a lot of of going back to like making paints and how they made it out of like mummies and stuff or the deceased.
Hmm.
It's been everywhere, and I don't know what it is like. Where you feel like it's an honor to remember somebody by using their like organs or their blood, their material, their hair. I also did
Yeah,
some research.
cremation ash.
Yeah, like how they also made brushes from their hair and not from the. They would make brushes from gentlemen's beard hair versus hair from the head. I guess
Okay.
because it's
Hmm.
coarser. I don't know.
Yeah, I could see that.
Um, all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff. I find it. I would be honored if somebody did that. I mean,
No, absolutely. They could totally take my beard hair.
that's not what I meant, but yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I would be honored if somebody took my ashes and then worked it into a painting of something that would be a remembrance of me. But yeah, I don't. I don't know. I don't think that AI is going to replace everything with art. I think that's definitely some place that we're going to be on an uphill battle with it. And
Hmm.
I think it will burst to a point because, still there's uh, digitally created cartoons and things, but then there's also still cartoons that do well that are not digitally created, that they still hand paint
Oh yeah.
everything. Um, so I think it might be like running a side by side because there's not everybody likes the same things. And I think even if you grow up with AI, there's going to be people that are just like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I just don't. So I don't like how it comes out or whatever. And I mean, that's me with, I like the, the stories of some of the digital artworks, and the characters and stuff, but the cartoon animation itself is just lackluster for me personally.
Hmm.
And that's my personal opinion uh, with digital art in like the cartoon world. Again, I have friends that do digital art. They do amazing stuff. Not putting down on it. It's just a personal preference that's
No, I
not what I
mean,
like when I watch cartoons. So,
something is definitely
but
there
I think there's
because
always going to be that.
I was traditional artist for years and years and years, and then I found digital art, and I found that I was very good at it, and I liked it, and I liked doing it, but I didn't feel as accomplished when I would be like, okay, there, I just rendered a new piece. Like, there it is sitting in digital space. Whereas I have like a painting that I just hung on my wall.
Hung on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like I only do um, my digital. Like I started doing digital art because I was using it to touch up paintings that I wanted to turn into prints. So if for whatever reason there was like a light glare, my nine-tailed fox, two of the fox tails go off of the page on the original painting, and I fixed that for the prints,
Hmm.
um, which is honestly a common thing. I have a print of a Dale that I absolutely love. It was definitely different than the backdrop that it was from a backdrop that he had painted for a ballet. And I saw that in a Dali exhibit that I went to, and it was a little different. And I was like, oh, they touched it up. Okay. Um, so like I started learning that, and then I only do my D&D characters in digital form for the most part because it takes me so long to do figures, and it's so much easier for me to like lop off an arm and reposition it there than have to like draw it and draw it and draw it. And I'm like, I just that's a space that I definitely utilize digital art for.
Hmm.
Um, but it's the same thing. Like I look at my character Ilian, and I'm like, I wish I could do this better on digital or on traditional so that I could have like Ilian hanging on my wall, my wizard, or have my murder fluff, which is my Alan rogue. I actually do have a murder fluff in ink. I drew him first in ink,
Oh.
but um, his name's Shadow Feather. We call him Murder
Oh.
Fluff because he's very adorable, and he has many times pretended to be a stuffed owl. He's a master of deception and disguise.
Wow.
He's very powerful, and he wipes out like parties. Um, he's very fun. But yeah, so I have that, and then I have Nyx Fortune, my sailor tiefling, and her I did in digital, and I was just like, God, like I would really love to have these hanging on my wall, but I also don't want to make prints of them to have them hanging on my wall. I
Yeah.
don't know. I will buy other people's prints. Buying my own prints, it's just, I don't want my own prints. I want my own art on the wall. But again, that's personal preference. So I think we definitely took a pretty decent deep dive on what our thoughts were with how it's going to be in 100 years for art, with the introduction of AI, and how that's going to either bulldoze or become part of or run aside traditional artists and digital artists. But I think we did cover a lot of basics. If any of you have any comments or, any feedback, definitely put it down in the comments. I would love to continue this
Absolutely.
conversation. But I want to thank you all for joining us.
Yes, thank
Our
you.
links are in the description. This will be broadcasting on Jerry's channel and on my channel, but we'll have each other's socials down in the doobly doos below. So thank you so much, everybody. And thank you, Jerry, for being on the podcast. This is
Thank you,
podcast
Kat. That
number
was
one.
awesome. I had fun.
I had fun too. All right. And I will see you in the next one.
Peace.
Bye.